Welcome to Building Wealthy Habits podcast. Now, this features content and conversations with me, Randy Barkley, Jeremiah Lee, along with Laura Lee. On this podcast, we share financial advice from a team of certified financial planners, including a California licensed attorney, an MBA professional with collective experience of over 40 years.
Today on Building Wealthy Habits, we are talking about the intersection of financial planning and executive coaching. We have an executive coach with us, King Barkley. He's someone special to us. He's been our coach. He's also part of our family as well. We're going to talk through where financial planning and coaching may overlap and where they might be different. Part of getting that vision for your life and that vision for your finances. This would be a good episode for anybody who is wondering, how do I build a better future for myself? What does that look like financially? What does that look like emotionally? So we hope you enjoy the episode.
All right, for all of our listeners, I want to welcome you back to the second part of a two-part series where we are talking all about executive coaching. And let me just start off by saying the gang's all here. This is quite a family meeting that we're having, and we're welcoming any listeners to participate. So today we're talking about how executive coaching has had an impact on our client journey process. So to have this conversation, we knew it was essential to bring an executive coach, and one that is near and dear to our hearts. Joseph Barkley from Novus Global is here joining us today. King Barkley is an executive coach, author, and speaker. He's also the president of the Meta Performance Institute. He's based in Los Angeles, California. He's a former television and film songwriter who became a nonprofit and for-profit entrepreneur. He now dedicates his professional energy to helping accomplished individuals and teams who want to discover more of what they're capable of and generate clarity and the courage to experience it. What a fantastic bio. And might I just add, he is a fantastic older brother. And like I said last episode, one of my favorite people on this planet. Welcome, Joseph.
I'm glad you got the bribery payment to say
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Here. That's right.
Venmo? Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Right.
Yeah.
As it goes. That's good. Well, Joseph, we are so excited to have you here. We have worked with you individually. We've worked with you and with our team and your team. And one of the things we're talking about today is we have taken kind of that visioning process that you use as a coach and worked with our financial advising clients to say, what is their vision for their financial future? And we're kind of talking about how those two dovetail together. And at times it's clunky, at times it is wonderfully smooth and they connect together. So we're excited for our listeners to kind of hear a little bit of what we do as financial advisors and some of that we've received from you as a coach and how you walk people through that.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But to start us off, I actually ended the last episode by saying that I was going to contribute a little bit of we ended the last episode by talking about what's an aha moment or a major mind shift that we have personally experienced as a result of coaching. So I'm going to go ahead and share that because I like to be loyal to our listeners, uphold my commitments, which is exactly what I want to share. So for someone who has always struggled with the idea of failure, meaning that I'm going to run towards an activity that I know there's a good chance I'm going to be successful at, so that I can avoid failure in my life. I have really appreciated these nuanced terms, which is experiment versus commitment. And we have invited that terminology into our marriage, into our work environment, into personally I have in the gym, or, if I'm trying a new fitness goal. And recently I applied this. There was something I was trying at the gym that I just thought, there's no way I'm never going to make it. I'm not going to do it. And certainly not 4 times over, however many sets I had to do of it. And so Jeremiah invited me into this space where he said, well, are you committed to it? Or are you just experimenting with it?
Ooh,
and
that's kind of a jab.
The two terms allowed me to play with it. If I'm committed to it, then I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, and how that builds confidence. If I'm just experimenting with it, it's this place of playfulness. I'm just going to try it. Let's just try it on for size. And so those two terms, without absorbing too much time this morning, have been a major mind shift for me. I've really appreciated those. So
that's incredible.
So the last episode, we got to look internal at the impact of executive coaching on a team, on our staff, on building a culture. And for our listeners, for anyone interested in executive coaching, just kind of like peering behind the curtain about what does it mean to have an executive coach. On this episode, we want to talk about where executive coaching and financial planning align, and where we are actually being very purposeful about adopting some of the principles, the tenets, if you will, of executive coaching into our financial planning process, because our process starts with kind of a client intake process, as we call it. It's kind of this onboarding process as we get to know a new client. And so the first few meetings that we have together is our chance to clarify what their vision is. And so we kind of invite our clients into it. And this is a newer exercise for us. So what I want to do on this episode is talk about the anatomy of a vision meeting, the anatomy of sitting down and talking about what it means to have a vision, to create a vision. If you don't have one, to just kind of take a stab at it. So Joseph, if you can kick us off, let's break down some of the key elements of a vision setting meeting.
That's wonderful. The beginning of any vision conversation begins with some picture of the preferred future, and it likely will start with one of two things. One is most of us will start with some vague sense of where we want to go. And as you'll hear me say 100 times over, vague is not bad. East and West are both vague, but they are opposite. So to sit down with someone, my vision for how I want my retirement to look like, or what the legacy I want to leave for my children is kind of like this. That's okay. Great place to start. We know we're headed east. Then the next step there, as we are advisors or coaches, is to invite them into specificity. Hey, let's talk about, is there a number? Is there a destination? We'd love to have a lake house. Which lake do you want it to be on? Oh, it'd be this lake. How many bedrooms do you want in that house? Really paint a picture of what you want this future to look like in as specific, beautiful, thrilling detail as possible. Then what I like to do as a coach, what we all do and my colleagues do, and I know that this is a lot of how Tricord serves people, is to just check in on what that vision does for the person energetically. Before we talk about the plan and all the obstacles in our way and habits that we've had up until now, hey, is that exciting when you think about that picture of how many zeros you want in the bank account, or how, what you want to donate to a foundation in your 80s? Does that sound exciting to you? Tell me, does it thrill you? Is it jaw dropping? I'm not asking whether or not it feels possible or whether or not it feels within reach or hard or easy. I don't know. I just want to know. The phrase I often will use with my clients is, I don't want my fingerprints on your vision. So it doesn't have to be exciting to me. It doesn't have to be my preferred picture of your future. I want to hear your heart. I want to hear your imagination. So that's one place that it starts, and I'll talk about, we can move into additional steps there. And I also have found many times adults really struggle to paint a clear picture of their future. And so another place to go is to start with complaints. And I don't know, for your listeners, your viewers, what they think about complaints. Maybe they were raised to say, hey, don't be a whine, you're being a victim, complaints are bad. And I suppose to a point they can be if all you have is a complaint without wanting to move beyond it. But what we like to say in our space is a complaint is a vision in disguise. If my complaint right now is that I stubbed my toe, my complaint is that my toe hurts and I can't walk, I'm glad I complained about it. What I'm really saying is my vision is that my toe will feel healthy and I can walk like a normal person again. That's my vision. Great. So let's start with a complaint. Oh, my complaint is like the economy, and in the next 10 years, and my kids there's going to be like a civil war for our finances as we age. Let's get it all out on the table. Let's get petty. Like the last 3 financial advisors I met with, they took me for a, they swindled me, or I'm just really suspicious about this. Oh, awesome. Let's get all of that out on the table. And then let's begin to play with those complaints to say, well, what does that reveal about what you want? I want to have a trusted advisor in my corner, somebody that I could give my PIN number to. I want to have, oh, awesome. Man, I want my family to be so tight and so unified that they're not thinking about what's in it for them, but they're thinking about what's in it for us. Oh, that's incredible. So then we starting from a complaint, we get to where the actual vision is, because we all have it somewhere in there, even if we haven't had a lot of practice articulating it. So those are a couple places we start.
Those are great. Thank you for sharing those. When we try and have this conversation with clients, sometimes we have clients that play right along, right? They jump in and we get to some of those really beautiful outcomes. Others, it's really tough to feel. But a lot of times what we'll get to is this, kind of what you started with, is almost like being able to taste their future, like describing it in such detail to and these are phrases that you'll use is how does that make you feel, or what's better about that, or how would the people around you be feeling if that, and get them to really dive into the specifics of what they're feeling, and then to kind of almost wipe it back off the table, which I think is the best moment. It's kind of that messy first draft idea to say, I said a thing, we talked about it and realized I don't really care about that. That really doesn't do it for me. And to wipe it away. And I think with coaching, what's really been beneficial to us is to get a little more comfortable wiping things away and saying, someone says, oh, I want to have a boat. Well, what do you feel like on the boat? Well, I feel like I'm fixing it. Like, okay, well, maybe you don't want the boat. Maybe let's get rid of that. But when you think about having your kids around, and what really you're thinking about is, I want the family to gather somewhere. I want them to be engaged, and that may be a very different vision. So that's a great one.
I think in that invitation to set a vision, it can be, very expository. It can be revealing. And oftentimes we're meeting with a couple, and sometimes it's not until that moment that one spouse or partner hasn't revealed to the other what it is that they're thinking, because it feels so outrageous or so ridiculous. Dad and I recently met. In fact, I've got two stories on two extremes. One, a couple that would retire tomorrow, and they were coming to us to say, can we do it? Can we still have enough money for our future? But we need to leave this burdened culture that we're currently a part of. We're so ready to step into their retirement. And then we have another situation where we've met with someone that says, really, I don't even have a picture for retirement. In fact, I don't even aspire to retirement. I love what I do. Can I just keep doing this forever? And what's going to happen if I stop? And so, right, like both beg a moment to step into a vision where Dad and I, we can't, and Jeremiah, when we meet with people, we're not prescribing any sort of vision. We're just inviting them into that space. And it can be very uncomfortable because it's new. And even sometimes between a couple, it might be something that they've never really been prompted or put priority to spend time talking about.
Some things that come up in that conversation, Laura, it can be an intimacy builder too. I think that's important to point out that, hey, I'm going to take a risk and tell you something that I want, but that might be a movement towards increased intimacy between us. Like, oh, I never knew that about my wife, that she really wants this as a part of her future. Another piece that comes up often that holds us back from creating a vision is some sense of moral obligation to a particular kind of vision. So you likely meet with clients who say, well, I want my retirement to look like ... because if we really dig down under it, that's how my parents did it. Or that's how my other colleagues have done it. And I can't think of anything different than, I suppose that's how I'm supposed to do it. Or maybe they might even say I should do it this way. Like, okay, yeah, hey, let's put that over here. That's one potential outcome. But to Jeremiah's point from earlier, would that be exciting to you? Okay, if we're really talking, if we're really, really talking what I really want, I don't want any of that stuff. I want this. I just never thought that that's something I could create or I should create.
Well, it's a difference between survival and thriving. And if I was if I put two words into that conversation, most people talk about survival because they don't see that 20, 30-year timeline to the end of their life. that we're talking with them about. And what we want to do is to give them the hope of thriving, and not a false anticipation, but a realistic view of what their future is in store for them, right?
And the other word I would impose there, I love that thriving. It reminds me of that playful word, which is like, let's play or experiment with what could be. And I think to the earlier point that Jeremiah made about sometimes when we meet with a new client, they come right into this conversation. They're excited to have it. And then other times it feels like a non sequitur because, and I attribute most of this, their experience of anything financial in the past has been only transactional. And so they come in for a meeting, and this is what I want to emphasize. And honestly, what I love so much about what we do is the relational and the personal aspect of what we do. And so I get it. It can feel like a non sequitur. Like, wait, I was coming to you for something transactional. I want to look at the numeric analysis or the quantitative analysis of, can I retire or can I not? Do I have enough money? Do I not? And yet we're here inviting them into this very mushy feeling space of like, tell us what your vision is. That's what I love about what we do. So sometimes it's evolving, right? It takes time and trust.
Yeah, and we're placing ourselves in partnership with, and I'm not placing myself completely in the hands of my wealth manager, my financial advisor, my estate planner. I have agency in that. I'm very involved in that to the degree I want to be. But what I'm less interested in is how it works. It's like my iPhone. Like I know the enjoyment I can get out of it, the connection I can get with other people out of it, certainly the distraction that I can create with it if I want to. And maybe from time to time, I kind of want to geek out on, how does this touchscreen work? Is there some fairy dust in here that makes this thing do what it does? And
you mean there's not?
A phone call from an airplane. Right. I'm talking to somebody in another country for free, through a piece of glass. Like, the whole thing is just absolutely magical to me. But I'm really glad there is a team of people who geek out on how to make that possible. And so we've painted a preferred picture of the future. Sometimes I do want to get under the hood and figure out how it works. So please, financial advisors, with your wisdom and your strategy, tell me how this is working. But at the end of the day, I just want somebody that I can trust to help me create the thing that I really want.
Yeah, I think the joy in our business is, again, Laura and Jeremiah have been in the firm for a shorter period of time. I commenced the firm almost 40 years ago, and my goal from the very onset was to have a relationship with my clients. I did not want to be a sales organization. I didn't want to be just a transactional organization. And that has evolved to where we are right now. And our firm, the relationship we have with our clients, I believe is very special. And it's very special in the sense of we get to share with them in the very key parts of their life financially, and sometimes even further than that. We just met with a client recently, and it's dealing with her parents who've passed away, and she's dealing with the emotional aspects of. We went through boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff.
Wow.
And we had the privilege to be able to sort that out for her. But I said, this is where it is right now. And she said, okay, thank you. I said, now this is what I suggest we do going forward. And she said, and these are the key words. I trust you. Go ahead. And to me, that was an incredible statement on her part. And it's meaningful for us in our relationship with our clients to get to that point. And again, it's not to take advantage of that trust, but is to really, truly help them get through the problems, and we become the solution to what's in front of them, right?
Yeah, I know it sounds a little cliche. Certainly we manage people's investments. We deal in actual commodities. But what I like to say is we deal in other commodities as well. There's emotional commodities that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And exactly what Dad said, when somebody says, I trust you, go ahead. Like, that is it's an honor. It's a tremendous responsibility. Like Dad said, Jeremiah and I are newer to this industry. And I've had a chance to listen in on these meetings that Dad has had with some clients that he's had for 25 years. And we might not be laying a brand new vision for them. What we're seeing is the outcropping of that vision, of that trust over time. And it's so fulfilling, to say like, yeah, what we promised we would do has happened. And so to draw this back to kind of that vision setting where we start, I do know that as a part of this conversation, we don't just want it to all be pie in the sky, 10x, what's totally impossible, that sometimes we have to acknowledge very real barriers that prohibit them from getting from point A to point B, right? So how does that play into that vision setting?
Yeah, there's an interesting dance between, and I'll keep my comments brief here, but there's so much more that, if your listeners or viewers want to tap into, there's so much more we can cover in this. But there's a really beautiful dance between how we define realistic and how do we stay sober. Realistic oftentimes is an arbitrary emotion. To stay realistic is just my gut saying, I can't think bigger than this, or I can't think more free than this. No problem. But that's your brain saying like, hey, I'm kind of used to a certain pattern. I'm used to certain limits. And you're asking me to stretch into something that's like uncertainty. Warning bells are going off. It doesn't mean that it's unrealistic. It just means it's untested. So what if we were to expand it? How would that change our behaviors today? The sober part, which is often, we resist this as well, is let's get very, very honest about your current reality. We can talk about your big vision, great, but we also need to be very sober about your current reality. Here's your debt. Here is your assets on hand. Here's your liquidity. Here's your, here's our current tax code. So there's so many things where great advisors can come in and help me. And this is also where great coaches come in to invite me into, okay, let's get really sober about current reality so we understand the gap between this big vision we have and where you currently are. And then where the work happens, what we just discussed here, is then it's going to, of course, bring up emotions because you have certain beliefs and mindsets about that. Great. Let's hold some space to feel what we need to feel about it. Anger, resentment, embarrassment, shame, fear, all of it. Let's just talk about all of that. And then we get to select whether or not we let that drive our behaviors. Because when we start talking about a strategy, let's start talking about a plan. It's going to take a measure of, it might take something different than fear and overwhelm and shame. It might take courage. It may take some perseverance, discipline that is going to be new. But if we don't first address like, oh, this is kind of freaking me out, then we likely are not going to be ineffective. Even with the best of plans, we're going to be ineffective with them.
Right.
Just how necessary too it is to have a coach, kind of going back to what we talked about in the first episode, somebody who's encouraging you. We say time and time again, and I think maybe this is similar to coaching as well, where it's, it's not our vision, it's not our future, it's not our dreams. We're here to be your best ally. We're here to help support what it is and build an infrastructure to get you where you want to go. There's no formula to it, right? It's a dynamic relationship. So I want to conclude this episode similar to how we did last time, which is Joseph, financial planning and executive coaching. We do parallel each other in some ways, but we are two different industries. We're certainly not trained executive coaches like you are. So for any of our listeners that are interested in exploring, like, what is executive coaching? Is this something I'm interested in? What resources? Where can they find more information?
Well, they can find me specifically on LinkedIn. That's probably the most direct way to find me, Joseph King Barkley. But my firm is full of incredible coaches, and we can be found at Novus, NOVUS.global. And you can set up a discovery call, download a bunch of free resources that go even further into depth of what we've talked about in this episode. And that might be something worthwhile for some of your listeners.
Thank you so much for being here. I think I speak for all of us when I say we just appreciate your time. We've benefited so much from having you in our life, not just as family, but also in your role as an executive coach. So thank you so much.
Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.